we're gonna get started in just a minute or two as a few more people wander in from downstairs. But thank you all for coming, and welcome to the 2024 annual meeting of the Newburyport Maritime Society. Thank you all for being here. It's usually a very boring meeting, but we try to spice it up a little bit. My name's Jack Santos. I'm the chair of the board. And just in case you were wondering, absolutely no relation to George Santos of New York. At best, a distant cousin. But so I just want to make sure that you all know that everyone in this room is a member of the Newburyport, all you members of this room, there may be some guests, a member of the Newburyport Maritime Society, and you're really holders of a sacred trust that began in 1772 with the Newburyport Marine Society. And of course, we have portraits in the back of many of the sea captains that were involved in that. So there really is a direct line from those people here to the people in the room tonight. And I thank you for being here. We are the heirs to those sea captains that are pictured in the wall behind us. The Maritime Society was founded in April 1968 through the efforts of the first directors of the society. I want to just name them in honor of the people that had the vision to start this museum. It included George Duffy, Edward Peel, Jerry Molina, George Cashman, Bernard Jaguar, Michael O'Brien, Richard Hurley, William Welch, Chester Young, and Albert Collier. That was in 1968. Through their efforts and many others that followed, the museum was opened in the restored Custom House building in 1975. So that makes next year our 50th anniversary. So it'll be a big year for us. So it's only fitting that we remember those early leaders of the society as we approach the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the museum. I want this to be a reminder that our history is an inspiration to us in how we as members of the Maritime Society act as stewards for this building and for the land and for the maritime history of the Lower Merrimack Valley and for the museum. Going further back in history, we should also note that the Custom House Maritime Museum is physically located on Nadakina, which is traditional ancestral homeland of the Pawtucket Pennacook peoples, past and present. We acknowledge and honor with gratitude the land and waterways that the Almovac people who have stewarded Nadakina throughout generations. It's particularly a poignant year. Well, before I get into that, here's our mission and vision for those of you that may not have this memorized. To engage, we say this at the beginning of every board meeting. So you new board members in the room, get ready. Let's see to engage and inspire all with Newburyport's unique maritime history by sharing and preserving the Custom House building and collection. And our vision is to excite all people with the enduring relevance of Newburyport's maritime history, making us the destination within the destination. Now, as I stated, the Nadakina tribal land is kind of important because it actually fits into one of the things that we've done in the last few weeks. It's poignant. Our maritime history doesn't begin with the first settlers, and we haven't done all that well in the last 50 years, recognizing what happened with the first settlers. This year, just a few weeks ago, we purchased what's been known as the Coffin Stream assemblage of Native American artifacts. And it was, you might ask, Coffin Stream, what is that? Well, who's here is from West Newbury? Okay, there's a few people from West Newbury. This is an 1850 map of West Newbury, and Coffin Stream is in, you can see H. Coffin's house right there. That's why it's called Coffin Stream. Just in that area is where these artifacts were found. So these were clearly peoples that lived on the river and made their living and hunters and gatherers along the Merrimack River. I overlaid a Google map so you can actually tell it's 113's over here. This is the oh gosh, no, it's slipping my mind. Artichoke, the Artichoke River, the Indian River here, and Mill Pond right over here. There you go, Camille, and you can go right there. so right nearby is where these artifacts were found. Our next First Friday, we will actually have the unveiling of the artifacts. So you can, when you come to First Friday, you'll see them. But here's a peek of what some of those pieces look like in terms of being a scraper that they used at the time, or a stone arrow point. So it's just fascinating, and we now add that to our collection to start extending the maritime history of the area further back 10,000 years potentially. So that kind of puts everything in context. And before I turn it over to the main event this evening, I want to briefly review some of the highlights from 2023. Of course, who can forget Maritime Days? For those of you, right, Bob Cronin, who was in charge of all of it, can forget. For those of you, I know the most common thing that was said to me when we had signed a deal with this tall ship to come in was, do you realize July 4th is really kind of a dead time around here? Well, we made it come alive, and there was quite a crowd in Newburyport. It was really exciting. We raised over $25,000 for a museum, but more importantly, we added to the spirit of the community in our fair city. That included a First Friday event we had while the ship was here, the Newburyport Lantern Festival, which we participated in, and it was just a stunning evening with one of the ship members singing at the Lantern Festival. Impromptu music on deck with the Portermen, our gala, a great lobster bake that evening, and what many of you may not know, one of our members, Jason Novak, who does a lot of drone photography and has photographed some of the galleries here in the museum, I introduced him to the captain of the ship. And I guess it worked out really well, because when the ship left, it left with Jason on it, and he spent 2 months at sea with the Now Trinidad. So good on him, and he had a great time and struck up some lifelong relationships. Shortly after the Now Trinidad was here, we had our annual Rybacki Award, which is held during Yankee Homecoming. That's an award that we give to someone from someone who's made a great contribution to the local Coast Guard station, and it really solidifies our relationship with the Coast Guard. This fall also saw an amazing loan. That's the Daniel Tenney, the figurehead from the ship Daniel I. Tenney, and it is actually Daniel Tenney himself. For those of you that don't know Daniel Tenney, he was born in Newburyport, went to New York, made his money in the jewelry business. We got this. We got the figurehead from the Nantucket Historical Society. It's on loan to us. We have quite a few other items related to the Tenney ship, including some Tenney chinaware. You may know Mr. Tenney because he was a great benefactor for many things in town, including the Washington statue up on the Mall. Right, and I got 2 pictures of it here for a purpose. Hey, that's a current day picture of the Washington statue. This is a picture from around 1910, and I guess this is probably in keeping with the norm of the times. That didn't always say Washington on the front of it. It actually said presented by Daniel I. Tenney. So, yeah, and sometime around 1920, the city decided we're going to get rid of that and put Washington on it. But nonetheless, he was a great benefactor for the city, and I'm so glad that we have that figurehead here, and it's positioned strategically on the stairway. our holiday festival took place. Our holiday open house took place in December. We came back to our traditional wreath auction. And while the Maritime Tree in past years was an awesome outdoor addition during the COVID years, this past holiday season, we took advantage of the relaxed social distancing, brought back everything indoors. In fact, it was probably a good idea because people would have been tripping over the construction equipment along the waterfront, and everyone was out of the cold. We also got to highlight our galleries, and we highlighted the front entrance of the museum with that beautiful wreath that was placed over the door. And finally, what I did want to go over is that on your seats, you have a lot of paperwork, which includes the real order of business today, which is to vote in new members of the board. But we also had a strategic plan that we implemented in 2022. Seems so long ago. We'll probably relook at that plan in 2025 and revise it either in 25 or 26. But I didn't want to make sure that didn't go to waste, and we at least said a few words about it that highlighted where we're making progress. The three areas, if you will remember, if you were here at the annual meeting last year, are stewardship, education, and community. On the stewardship front, we've made progress on our collections. We actually have off-site storage in Amesbury. It's a big deal for us. We've been able to empty out a lot of what was in the attic, start cleaning it up, start organizing it, making sure our database was up to date, and rehoused it, put it in the storage in Amesbury. We also have a lot of other things that are like Christmas decorations and Halloween decorations are stored in Amesbury, but it's freed up some space and given us the room to do some of the things that you've seen done today around redoing all our galleries. We also hired a collections coordinator to help us do that. And on the building side, you may have noticed the beautiful back doors. They now match the front doors with that the red barn door look. And more importantly, it's set up for flood protection. Wait till next month when the high tides come in on the king tide schedule. I think we're expecting some significant flooding. Fortunately, it hasn't reached our doors yet, but we're prepared, and we've got some metal panels that slide into place and will protect as best as we can the building and the collections from flooding from that side, in addition to all the work that's being done on the waterfront that should be helpful. So that's been a good progress. We'll hear more on finances later in terms of stewardship. So Charlie Tontar, our finance officer, will be up to speak about that. And in addition, on the education front, we're in the paper all the time now, it's so exciting. We hired an education coordinator, created this Discovery Center, or phase one of the Discovery Center, put programs in place like a craft club, sketching, junior mariners. If you haven't been down in the basement and looked at what we used to call the conference room, it's now the Discovery Center. It looks something like this. So it's really exciting. And it's just the first phase because the intent is to dedicate the full basement for kids' activities and start getting the younger set up to the teenage years and college years more involved in the museum. Interestingly enough, on a side note, these panels, do we remember who did those?
Richard Gibney.
Richard Gibney panels are, we have them scattered in storage or throughout the museum. They were done in the 60s, and they're images from around Newburyport. And I just got a call last week from another town, I think it was Winchester here in Massachusetts. They had some Gibney panels and they wanted to know more about them, and they'll be coming up to look at our Gibney panels. So we're going to take advantage of them in the future. And finally, on the final point of our strategic plan, it's community. Very important to me. I think this museum is not only a museum, it's not only our heritage in terms of the history of the Lower Merrimack Valley, but it's also a place where people gather, they learn, they meet, they make friendships. And what we've seen happen in the last year is increased collaboration with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Salisbury. They're here 3 days a week, 2 or 3 days a week. And the senior center as well, we're collaborating closely with them. We're getting more involvement. We've met with the high school and the middle school, so we're ramping up a lot more activity there. Verity Boyer has really helped with all the education activities and our community activities, so hats off to her. She's our new education coordinator we hired halfway through the year last year. And then we also established a robust volunteer program for community members and retarees, for people that have a little time to give of their talent, and you'll be hearing more about that this evening as well. So, let's see. Oh, let me show you the volunteers. Lloyd, that's a pretty good picture of you, Lloyd. The working on that model. He continues to work on that model, and of course all of you members, visitors, and donors. That's why we're here, and that's how you make it all work. But, so for the we don't expect to take much longer than an hour this evening, and for the sake of time, we'll take questions at key points at the invitation of the presenter, mainly for finance and our executive director's presentation. We'll also take questions at the end of the evening. Here's the agenda. We're through with my welcome and remarks. James will come up and talk about his vision for the museum. Charlie is going to bring up the financial report. Our Don Roberts will discuss what he's been doing with volunteers. And then the highlight evening is the election of the 2024 Slate of directors. And then we'll close out with some awards, Q&A. And we'll be done for the evening. So without further ado, let me turn it over to James Russell. If we can give him a round of applause.
Thanks, Jack. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. It's great that after 4 months, I know everybody's name in this room, bar about 2 people. It's great. So Jack covered my report pretty much. It's been a lot of fun.
You can click. I didn't click on to go to the next slide. You can certainly. There you go.
All right, great, good. It's brief. It's actually very brief.
You can even click one more.
Oh,
we did tell we rehearse this, right?
Oh, yes. All right. There's the menace from Nantucket. This is unusually for me. This is actually a serious speech. I should take a serious speech seriously, I suppose. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do is cover some stats. I'm going to have to do a little reading here, if you don't mind. But first of all, I want to thank directors. Jack, thank you to all the directors in the room. Thanks very much for just a fantastic 4 months here, or whatever it is. It's terrific. We laid out, as I reflect back to 4 months ago, we talked about this embarking on a 2-year initiative, and we said, what would this look like? What would this transformation look like? So I wanted to talk to you about that transformation. And first of all, and I want to try to put it into a strategic context with goals, etc. So I won't get so specific, but I'll try to keep it fairly high level. So at a 30,000 foot view, our goal is, what's our goal? What's our primary goal? So it's to provide a superior customer value. That's what we do, right? When somebody comes in the door, you want to provide them superior customer value. It's a little bit like Starbucks. When you go into Starbucks, you want the very best cup of coffee you can get. Well, when you come to the museum, that's what we're going to provide. And our customer, you, members, donors, kids, guests, students, researchers, we define our different constituencies and audiences. We talked about breaking down barriers. It's great to see so much diversity in the audience today. So we've got work to do here, right? As we look at where we want to be in a couple of years, I think about Arthur and your kids running around. I think about Verity and our kids with the Boys and Girls Club. I think, what are we doing with outreach to various communities? One of the reasons why we're providing the free programs to Boys and Girls Club in Salisbury. So what are the psychological barriers we have to knock down? What are those cultural barriers? What are the attitudinal barriers? And one barrier that we're not going to be able to address is the physical barrier, the ability to allow access. And I was just over at Newburyport Framing yesterday in the chap that's doing framing for, where did the painting go?
You took it.
It was supposed to be here for a big unveil, but anyway, we'll see. You got to come back. You see, you got to come back to a history museum. So unfortunately, the physical barrier is one which will be well down the line. Delivering compelling museum experiences to all our constituents, retaining, attracting motivated board volunteers, stewarding long-term relationships, so literally it's lifelong learning, investing in our building, greatest collection asset, and importantly, listening to customer feedback and then adapting. So if we take those and we say these are some of our high-level goals, then you say, okay, so much good has happened in the past 4 or so months. We've done a lot of work. But I would also say that perhaps there are now more questions than I had 4 months ago, or that we all have, that you probably have, than I had 4 months, than we had 4 months ago. So let's project forward 4 months or 5 months and say, okay, he's up here talking, what are these qualitative measures? What are these tests to see, okay, is he on point? Is he walking the talk? So, as Jack alluded to, have we become a center for the community? How are we doing in terms of making our volunteer corps robust and preeminent? Do our peers benefit from our services? For instance, the Visitor Service Center downstairs, public programs. Have we increased and diversified our audience by age, gender, ethnicity, wider geographic appeal? Has the visitor who comes here, has the length of stay provided a wow experience, and is it sticking? Are they staying here for 30 minutes, that Google says, that's the average amount of time, or are they staying here an hour and a half or 2.5 hours? And that will be a measure of exceeding visitor expectations. Are we nurturing a sense of cultural inheritance in Newburyport with scholarship and collections? Are we the place where people want to give donations to? Do they think of us in terms of bequests, in terms of planned gifts? Have we increased philanthropy? Have we deepened our credibility? Are we competitive at a regional level? Are we delivering meaningful programs to members and students, such as the Boys and Girls Club? So these are very simple questions, and how do we measure those? And so here are a couple of others, 4 more. In a couple of years, it would be nice if we could be in a position such that we could apply to the American Alliance of Museums and get accreditation. We may not want to do that, but it would be good to be in a position should we wish to do so. We're not there now. Can we grow attendance to 25,000 a year? Why not? We're at 10 now, we can grow it. Can we double the number of supporters that we have now from about 600 to 1,200? Placing an emphasis on membership, major gifts, corporate sponsorships, and planned gifts. And can we deliver balanced budgets year over year and provide excellent fiscal management? So each of those are highly qualitative, and we can measure those. So these top-line goals, you need to map these to capacity, to resources, and to timeline. And we have to do that, and the strategic plan that Nita you put together in 2022 is a great start in this direction. So we need to define our big story to entice repeat visits by you, and also to excite and attract new supporters. So it might sound obvious, this is one of these Captain Obvious moments, but I believe we must focus on and be dominant in our core strength. We're a museum, first and foremost. We're a museum. You have to believe that. And you have to believe that you'll win with those cards. They're the cards that we've been dealt. Our essential differentiating value for the community and beyond is to be the very best museum that we can aspire to be. We should shoot for it. So in 2024, we're turbocharging change. I think that's obvious to everybody. The board is investing approximately $100,000 in restricted grants for projects, and these will be drawn down in the next couple of months. And we thank the Barton Foundation, Peterson Hale, Arakelian, Mosley Fund, Ware Fund, and CPC, and an anonymous donor for injecting major philanthropy to push us forward. The contention, why are we doing this? The contention is that new initiatives will generate excitement, boost volunteerism, impress donors, deepen the visitor experience, and justify the increase in admission from $7 to $10. So 2024, it's a pilot year. This is not the end of a process. We're just testing new concepts and new initiatives. Thank you for your patience. This is your baby that we're playing around with here. Change doesn't come easily, so I thank you for accommodating that and giving, frankly, all the volunteers runway to address change. 2025 is when we elevate our programmatic slate to a high level of production, presentation, and sophistication once we've gone through this pilot year. We want to see if this stuff sticks. So phase one, we'll repurpose, recast existing exhibits, as you're seeing, and collections to reconceive our core stories. We're converting private, underutilized spaces into public spaces. Think Marquand Gallery, think the space downstairs, the conference room being converted, etc. And we're particularly investing in our collection assets by conserving and presenting, and we're looking for the very best material. When somebody comes in here, I want them to see, it's museum parlance, I want them to see good stuff. And I want this to be the very best. So while we're attracting new and exciting collections, for instance, there's a clipper ship that just got donated to us at the back of the room that needs to be restored. We also need to look at the storage in our collection, but we also need to take care of it, and our off-site facility is providing secure location for the items which are not presented, and that's very helpful. Throughout the museum, we need to weave in family-oriented interactives and participatory elements. We need to deepen content delivery through utilizing technology on-site and online. We need to provide audio tours, for instance. And we're going to complete this pilot in May 24. We're actually counting the hours to May 24 at this point. So now the next piece is important because as we message out these changes to constituents, the importance of these, about the importance of these upgrades, and we're seeking buy-in, really all we're doing is we're getting to a starting line. We're saying, okay, we've reset, we're bringing the organization to this point, this is our story. This initial work is going to highlight our strengths, but it's also going to expose many of our weaknesses. And we need to address these. Jack just mentioned one. In collections, we had a serious gap, for instance, in talking about indigenous people prior to 1635. Well, we recognized that, and then we do something about it. We act on it, and we did. Importantly, we have to listen to stakeholders. So in each of these rooms, in each of these programs, in each of these particular elements, operational elements throughout the museum, there are stakeholders. We need to get their feedback. How are we doing? Are we on point? Do we need to tack a little bit? Do we need to do a course correction to get it pitch perfect? That needs to happen before we can go to phase 2, which is the 2025 plan. And so that process will take some time in the summer and the fall. So what do we still need to do on the programmatic side if we've got these various programs? Well, think about the past. Think about the past 50 years and all that great scholarship which has been done by so many people. How do we mine it? How do we find it? How do we aggregate it? How do we present it? For instance, just yesterday I met Janet Howell, who was director here from 89 to 94, and she put up some wonderful exhibits. Do you know about those? Have you seen that research? It's as good today as it was then, and we need to expose it. We need to provide conditions for original research. we need to step that up. We need to establish web dominance in our subject matter. Our educational programs need to move from light and episodic to deep and frequent. Imagine if we had a school tour every week. That's what we need to aspire to. Digital engagement needs to answer one very simple question. If you're a high school senior and you're doing your essay for college on the maritime history of Newburyport, if you cannot find the answer on our website, you have failed. It's a fail or a passing grade. There's nothing in between there. If you're doing your paper, you come to our site. If you go to somebody else's site, we've lost them. We have to dominate that space. On the administrative side, most importantly, the museum needs to strengthen its financial position and examine every expense. Leveraging technologies, as has been done with Jack's help, to bring efficiencies to fundraising and communications is critical. I think you all know the curiosity of some of our communications. CPC supported projects to stop water infiltration into Portico and the east and north face is necessary and urgently needed. That's what's happening at the moment. Next up is installation of, we need to stop ultraviolet light coming in here, and we need to try to keep this building as cool as possible in the summertime. That's absolutely critical, particularly seeing as there's about $1 million of artifacts just in these two galleries alone, which are south-facing. Very concerned about that. On communication, we need to do much better about better aligning and systematizing our processes. The three-legged stool of earned income, endowment, and philanthropy must grow. And as members, you're our best ambassadors to help us do that. So please spread the good word and encourage participation. On philanthropy, very soon we're rolling out a challenge next month, and it'll be to sponsor each of the items throughout the museum. There are about 250 or so, and we'll get a communication on this, and it'd be a nice way for you to memorialize, to honor, and many people have stepped forward already, which is one of the reasons why this idea has come forth. Also, we have a major gala this fall. I think we're going to talk about it a little later. We've set a very aggressive bar of $100,000. Fundraisers say, don't do a gala unless you're raising $100,000, so we're raising $100,000. If I do a quick count in here, I think we're going to sell a number of tables here, right? So there you go. The tables are pretty cheap. Isn't that right, Susan? We need corporate support, so please help in that regard and open your Rolodexes. My point here is that I'm talking to you as a paid staff person, but I'm here for a period of time. You're here for your lifetime. So this museum is your museum, and it's one of the reasons why in your stack of papers you have a list of volunteers. Because the list of volunteers, whether you're a board member or whether you're on a task force or whether you're a docent, this is what drives the organization, and frankly, it's the heart of the organization, it's the soul of the organization, and it's the brains of the organization. So in that regard, I'll probably end with, first of all, welcoming new directors coming on. Congratulations, Tim and Neely and Tom. I'd like to congratulate outgoing directors. Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you. Congratulations for your great service. Was that directed at the other directors or just Paul? And lastly, only because day in, day out, I've been working with just an amazing group of volunteers who have me up at about 7 in the morning and me going out at 7 at night. And I just want to thank you each personally for your remarkable work and commitment, effort, energy, and absolute love of the institution. So thanks very much.
Next up, Charlie Tontar, who will give us a finance report. Just to kind of add on, I can't help but do it. I love the focus on research. Just as we came in for this afternoon, and Ted, you can back me up on this, this fellow walks up the front steps. And he says, yeah, I'm here to look at the museum. And why in the area? He says, oh, I'm over at the Peabody Essex Research Library doing some research on the Panama Canal. And I was really interested in George Peabody, who worked on State Street and became a major financier in London. George in 1850 was instrumental in some of the early designs for the Panama Canal. So that's interesting. But did you know that Newburyport's William Wheelwright in 1835 actually proposed that canal? And he said, no! So I think he's coming back to do some more research.
I've been given 5 minutes, and this thing will, I just stop talking when it tells me to. Which button is it? Down button. Down button. Yeah. Here we go. So I'm the treasurer, which is by a long shot the most exciting position you can hold on the board. Some other people might disagree with that, but I love it. And so, this is sort of just a brief overview. If any of you have any questions, get in touch with Jack or James. I'm pretty sure that they'll be able to help you out. So first of all, what you have here is shows our non-fixed assets. That's everything but the building and the collections, obviously. So what it consists of in blue is the more liquid assets, that is checking account, saving account, money market accounts, CDs, that sort of thing, where we can fairly quickly access funds. And then I guess that's kind of yellow, orangey, our investments. That's, we have an account with Merrill Lynch where we have two funds. One is a building-specific fund, and the other is a general type endowment fund. So you see the change. I went back to 2019 because that was the year, well, it's 5 years ago, which makes it neat. And then it was the year before the pandemic hit. And so you'll see that, and of course the gray is total. And you'll see the change over time. We took from 2019 to 2020 to 2021, 2020 and 21, we had an increase in the investment fund. Then in 22, which was a very bad year for equities, we took a hit. That came back in 23, and I just checked. So far this year, our investments have increased by $55,000, and we're just about where we were back before 22, which was a bad year. All right. So I just wanted everyone to have a picture of how we stand. So we're standing a little at about $850,000 there right now. Right. We hit the next one. Then in terms of income and expenses, and I have 2 minutes and 19 seconds left. So what is blue is income by year, and then whatever that color is, expenses. So you see that in 2019, before the pandemic, we had ran a surplus, right? Which in a profit-oriented business would be called a profit, right? In 2020, which of course was the pandemic, we ran a deficit, and that was somewhat mediated by the fact that we got a PPP grant. 21 and 22 we began to come back, and then I want to look at that. Look at the 22 to 23. You'll see that our expenses last year were greater than the revenue that we brought in. That followed from that strategic plan. One of the things we did, the board decided to do in 22, was to hire a development officer. to try to take advantage of some of the funds that we have, and we viewed it as an investment. So we did run about $125,000 deficit in '23, and we're hoping, at the end of '24, we will evaluate that decision going forward. So the intent in hiring a development officer was to significantly increase our gifts and grants so that we can move the museum to the next level. And I have 26 seconds to answer any questions. No questions? Great. Thank you very much.
We have Don Roberts, who has been our volunteer coordinator. And yeah, and there's the clicker, is that one right there?
Thank you. Good evening. Everything that you've heard so far has been accomplished by volunteers, because except for one who's a staff person, I'd like everyone here to indulge me for a minute and raise your hand. You'd raise your hand up, just everyone here. Go ahead, I'm not asking you to volunteer. Because you already are a volunteer. Everyone in this room except James is a volunteer. However, I will attest to the fact that if we're paid for every hour that James worked, you would really wish that he actually would do less work, because he's giving us so much volunteer time beyond what we're paying him at this particular stage. All of this volunteers is basically people. It's people talking to people. And anything that you've heard about the vision, about the mission, about the needs, it's you talking to your friends about what's happening at the museum, the positive things. I mean, in any organization, there's always, stuff going on, but if you look at the bottom line of what's happening, we have an exciting new time period we're entering. And that I want you to talk about, and just doing that by talking to your friends and saying, then you are fulfilling the volunteer process. So here we have, right now on paper, perhaps in that list, there are 55 volunteers that I know of, and they include board members. Yes, board members are volunteers too. Docents, you see, collections and exhibits, event hospitality, greeters, education, research historians. But so many people are, again, if you are just speaking to a friend about the museum, you are doing volunteer work. I broke it down a little bit more so you can see that what's happening. The board members are set. We have the number of board members that are there. We're welcoming some new and saying goodbye to a few, and that's a normal rotation. The board members are responsible from a volunteer basis to maintain the fiduciary life of our museum, to set looking at the future and going out and saying, okay, how are we going to sustain this beyond ourselves? How are we going to keep it going? What do we need to do to make that happen? And that's a volunteer discussion that happens. And they're talking to you and listening to you and hearing what's going on and trying to make sure that this museum goes on not for just 50 years that we're going to be celebrating soon, but will go way on into the future. So that's the board member's job. Docents. To be frank, I'm in a desperate need for docents. We want to open up this museum. So we're going to have a summer schedule coming up. And I need people who like to tell stories. Now everyone backs away from being a docent because, I have to learn so much. Well, you already know, if you live in Newburyport, you're already a docent, because you're always talking about history to somebody. Oh, I'm living in Captain so-and-so house. I'm living on Lime Street. Oh, my house has a sign on the front of it. Let me tell you the story of my house. Or here's the street that I live on, which is part of the street that was going on. And did you know that Captain Boardman had this big shell in front of the house that I'm living in now? I mean, you're already a docent living in Newburyport or living in Amesbury or Salisbury as well, because part of your living here is embracing the history, and that's telling the story. For us here, it's capturing the vision. No one really succeeds in telling a story and telling the story of our museum unless you've captured our vision. We are stewards of history. We are the current voice of the history of Newburyport in this area and the life of this museum. We present the message. It's not about us, it's about the museum. And right now, we're in the process of changing our exhibits in a way that really makes a lot of sense. It's going to be timelined. We're going from the Customs House in the 1790s, the founding of the Coast Guard. We're coming upstairs to a colonial period that's in the Marquand Room. We're going to be moving into the Revolutionary War in 1812. And then we've got this wonderful new exhibits coming up that's going to show the souvenirs that our captains brought back. And this will be all about clipper ships in the 19th century and here. I mean, you can do that. I just gave you a tour. You know, it's just as easy as that to go around the museum and to show people, and mostly to listen to their questions, and you learn more from them, and that's part of the fun of it, than you actually sharing with them. So as we go through, we have collections, exhibits, people. Boy, these people have been working hard. You know, these volunteers have been working on this to make these exhibits new and fresh, and it's sweat equity. People are moving and carrying and pushing and painting. Painting group meets on Saturday morning. We're going to be doing another group to do painting one of the rooms here. So that's just sweat equity, but it's learning about these collections. You get a chance to see these wonderful, valuable pieces we have that are being brought down out of the exhibit. That's exciting. You're not only seeing it, but sometimes you even allowed to touch history. You know, to actually make it real through touch, and that's part of that committee. Events and hospitality. I'm the only one whose tips qualify here right now, which means I'm the only one who can serve bar. You know, so if I go away, guess what happens to the wine and beer thing downstairs? You know? So I really suggest that a few of us pick up that volunteer thing to get tips qualified. It's very easy, it's online, just so we can continue that lovely practice of being a member, to have some wine and beer and other things that are available. And helping setting up, setting up and taking down is important as well. Greeters. We have currently one very active full-time director, and everyone else under him, except our development director, they're part-time. We're not keeping the gift shop / visitor center open with a staffed person on a regular basis to help maximize the use of our funds. So I need people who like to greet people and to say, hi, welcome to the museum. You know, let me show you where things are, to kind of be present here. But there's a second more important reason for being here: security. We're a museum, we have things close by, and some of them are little things, and little things can disappear. And we need people who are present in the museum to make sure that when people are going out of the museum or coming into the museum, welcomed, and they said farewell with a warm heart in the process. So we need greeters. We're going to be open Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 2 shifts, morning shift, afternoon shift. If you can give me 90 minutes out of some of those shifts, just 90 plus minutes out of those shifts, then please sign up. You'll hear more about that. Education. We have this new education program. Boys and Girls Club, Boys and Girls Club, Boys and Girls Club. If you're a retired teacher and you miss being with students, come and help us. We have one person helping with this particular program that's going on, and she needs help. You know, you don't have to teach the class. She needs a teacher assistant. Wouldn't you like to be a teaching assistant? You know, rather than being the teacher? I've done that before. That's a lot of work. But Verity Boyer is doing this program, and she needs help. So that's Tuesday afternoons from 3 to 5, or Wednesday afternoons dealing with boys and girls from the Boys and Girls Club and the future. Research and historians, we have a lot of that going on. I think everybody in Newburyport considers themselves a historian, and so I ask you to share some of that information as well. Let's sit down. This is what we need. We need people to help us maintain the building and grounds. I know there's a volunteer person who helps us do the gardens, but we don't have anybody who takes up trash regularly other than the people who are happy to be here. We don't have anybody cleaning the bathrooms except when absolutely necessary. No, there's a regular routine for that. But we need people who take the vision to take responsibility for the exterior of this building and the interior to keep it clean and dusted. Dusting's real important. You know, I know it may say, oh, that's a really old piece. No, that's just dirty. And we get these things cleaned up. So we need that. Administration support. We really need people to come in and help fold envelopes fold letters and send out mails. We need people who have computer skills on Excel. We need people who can give a little bit of time, but are willing to be trained and under supervision to make sure it's done the way the museum needs it to be done. Major events. Bob Cronin, bless your heart, for that major event last time. There are probably 50 people on your volunteer sheet that aren't on there because they helped with the tall ship program. We're not doing this year, but we will be doing it soon. So, volunteers are the lifeblood of the museum. If you want to help us fulfill everything you've heard so far, then become a little more active. Just a little more active. There are some super volunteers that are here, and you might have to pull back a little bit, let go of it when time happens, but we need everybody here to become active volunteers, participate in some of those ways. Thank you very much.
So next for the main course of this evening, I want to jump ahead to Slate of directors. So Paul Swindlehurst, and you too can click. Okay, well we can click to the next one. How's that?
Hi, everybody. It's been a pleasure for me to serve as the chair of the nominating committee this year. I've done this now for the past 3 years. And I'd first like to thank the fellow board members, Susan Finneran and Charlie Tontar and Jack Santos, for joining that committee with us. The four of us worked hard, had a good time, and I think the outcome is pretty good. I'd also like to thank the directors of the board and Custom House members for submitting such thoughtful nominations for us to consider in the course of our work. And just an aside for a minute, I'm sitting there thinking about volunteerism and the board and so forth, and every month we're asked to fill out a cell on a spreadsheet indicating how many hours we gave that month. We're accountable to someone to turn in those hours. And the board members donate hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours in the course of a year. I see so many familiar faces here coming and going to First Friday programs and volunteering and so forth. But when I look out there and I see my board colleagues, and this is my 36th board meeting in 3 years, I look out here and see my board colleagues, and I have a special appreciation for what they do month after month after month. And so I'd like to just kind of call an audible here and take a moment and ask members of the board to stand and be recognized for your contribution. Please stand up. Please stand up. Thank you. So I present for your consideration a slate of 3 candidates for election to our board of directors for a 3-year term. Each of them is here tonight, and as I mentioned your name, I'd like you to just stand briefly so that people will recognize you. Let's start with Ellie Bailey. Ellie, I don't know where you came. Oh, there you are. Very good. So, you have the bios for people, but for those of you who haven't read them, I'm not going to read the bio that's there, but I would like to highlight those. Ellie hails from North Andover and is a proud alumna of UMass Amherst and Lesley University. Her professional journey is marked by significant contributions to education and museum administration. How good is that, right? Ellie's passion for fostering connections between communities and culture has been evident through her roles at the Peabody Essex Museum, the Museum of Old Newbury, and the Knock Middle School here in Newburyport. As she embraces what some might call retirement, right? Ellie continues to engage in her community through her work with the Newburyport Preservation Trust, where she dedicates her expertise to historic house research. Again, so good for us. She also imparts knowledge as an educator and guide for historic New England. Her commitment to preservation and education extends also to service and the Rings Island Neighborhood Preservation District Committee. Who knew, right? Right over there, Rings Island. And of the board of directors of the Friends of the Parker River National Wildlife Refuge. Ellie's life is deeply rooted in Rings Island in Salisbury, where she's resided for over 3 decades. There she finds the joy in the company of her pets and the tranquility of her garden and the warmth of her family. Mr. Tom Gould. Almost doesn't need an introduction, but I took the time to write this, Tom, so I'm gonna read it. Tom is a native of Newburyport and brings a strong educational background with degrees in mathematics and engineering from Tufts University and from Northeastern University. Had a 36-year career with Texas Instruments and held management roles in various departments that brought the opportunity for business travel for Tom and his family to Europe and Asia and Australia and the Americas. His community involvement includes leadership positions for other nonprofit organizations as well, like the Sons and Daughters of the First Settlers of Newbury. This will be Tom's second election to this board. In the past, he's had turns as both clerk and chair of this board. And Tom's personal connection, a lot of you won't know this, to the museum runs through his uncle's involvement on the board from 1973 to 1999, a long time. And it only underscores his family's commitment to our mission. Thank you, Tom. Tim Regan. Tim also is a Newburyport native and resides in his hometown now, representing the third generation of his family to have they can call this fair city, their home. After graduating from Newburyport High School in 2011, I have t-shirts that I still wear from 2011. Tim earned a BS in accounting from the University of Alabama. He's currently employed as a portfolio manager for the commercial loan program at the Newburyport Bank, a very good friend of ours. Tim brings a wealth of experience to his role. His professional background has included positions at East Boston Savings Bank, as well as senior roles at BDO and E&Y in their financial auditing groups. Since 2020, he's volunteered for the Greater Newburyport Chamber of Commerce on their finance committee, where he assists in helping them prepare their annual operating budget. Thank you, Tim. So, with the slate now having been presented, I now entertain a motion to accept and elect the slate as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. The ayes have it. Congratulations to everybody involved. Thank you.
We're almost there. Thank you, and fantastic. That is our major portion of business. But as a little bit of a celebration, is Jen Bogard here. She couldn't make it. I know Tom Strickler couldn't make it. Jen and Tom have served on the board for the past few years. Tom actually went through a full 3-year term, was not able to complete his second 3-year term, and Jen was not able to complete her first 3-year term. I'm sure she'll be back because she was a great contributor, and we'll be giving them awards that looks like this, the Custom House logo on it with a little plaque that reads Jennifer Bogard and Thomas Strickler. And thanks for your dedication to the Custom House Maritime Museum, March 21st, 2024. These are actual slates from the roof, and if you come down to the furnace room, you'll see a lot of them. We're putting them to good use. So that's Jen and Tom as board members. This is kind of unusual. I think this is the first year we're actually celebrating all board members that have left. Typically, we have celebrated board members that endure the full 6-year term, but I think the board this year felt that if you contributed and it showed just so much camaraderie that takes place on the board, we wanted to thank you for the time put into the board. It is quite a bit of time. And finally, our outgoing board member, Paul Swindlehurst, extra special. Paul, come up here. Paul has brought a level of professionalism to the board, and it really showed in a lot of the committees, the development committee, as well as how we went after new board members. It was just a really well thought out process, and our ED hiring that Paul was also part of. So wanted to thank him especially for that, as you can see. Back with gratitude for many years of generous service and dedication for preserving the maritime legacy of the city of New York. Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody. This is very special. I chaired the search committee for the new executive director that helped us find James. And I will always be the very first person at the Custom House Maritime Museum with whom James ever spoke. I was the first one, and it's because his resume came in very close to the deadline that we had set to close nominations or applications. So much so, we grabbed a conference call with the search committee members. And I said to them all, this guy's so late coming in, do we still want to do this? And they said, you know. And I said, let me call him.
I didn't want to read another resume.
Let me call him. So on a Sunday, James and I connected by a Zoom call for an hour. And I came away thinking, there's a very good chance that the person with whom I just spoke is going to be the next executive director. We went through the whole process. We had 3 wonderful finalists, but the board voted unanimously to offer this position to James, which is, I think, one of the smartest things that's happened in the time that I've been on the board here. And I mentioned this only to make one larger point, which is any success that I've had here in my time on the board is because I've been surrounded by board members and volunteers that have lifted me up and helped me, and anything that I needed to have done, I turned to them and always had 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people raise their hand and say, just tell us what you need and we'll get it done. And I'm grateful for that. So my success is because of their effort to lean into this important work. I will cherish this, and as I will my time on the board here, it's a wonderful organization, and I thank you very much for all of this.
So we're at the end of our evening. Just like one other point, we have this is the Nathaniel Tracy letter in the frame. You may remember about a year ago we had an anonymous donor step up and finance the acquisition of this important letter. Nathaniel Tracy used to live in the library and financed our privateer fleet out of Newburyport. This letter was to one of his captains that was captured by the British up in Canada. So we have that on display. You're welcome to take a look at it. Before we close out the meeting, are there any final questions or thoughts that anybody may have? And without further ado, we'll close the meeting and thank you all for attending.